Who are you, Courtney?
I'm a student and I'm doing a documentary about veterans.
About the veterans
Yeah.
at Temple University?
Yep.
That's in Philadelphia.
It is.
Oh.
A veteran is anyone who's actually served 1 day in the military. So, like, if you sign your contract today, tomorrow you're a veteran.
Everyone that has served has a story of some kind, and what they experienced in their time definitely defines who they are when they get out, whether it be after 4 years or 20 years. Hi, my name is Sergeant Peter Slusser. I served in the Marine Corps from March 2015 to January 2019.
So my name is Mason Martinez. I am 31 years old. I'll be 32 this year. I served in the Army for 6 years active duty and then 2 years inactive.
My name is Tony Hipszer. I was an intelligence specialist in the United States Navy, and I made the rank of E6 or Petty Officer First Class.
Michael St. John, 42, and Chief Warrant Officer 4.
So my name is Jennifer Philemon, and I actually was in the regular Army, and I left the Army as a Specialist 4.
My name is Tony Hipszer. I was regular Army stationed at Fort Bragg. We currently live in Columbia, South Carolina, but I'm from the greater Philadelphia area. And I was private first class.
My name is Robert D. Heath Jr. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel, retired in 1996 from the U.S. Army.
I was the infantry.
I joined after a short stint in college. I left college without a real plan and didn't know where my life was heading. So I decided to join the military. So for the Marine Corps, there's two recruit training depots, one in Parris Island, South Carolina, and the other one is in San Diego, California. If you are east of the Mississippi, you go to Parris Island, and if you are west of the Mississippi, you go to San Diego. San Diego is male recruits only, and Parris Island is male and female recruits. So there's 4 training battalions, and 4th Battalion is all females. And the Marine Corps is still the only branch that has segregated training cycles, so male and female recruits are kept separate. The only times you see them is in passing, maybe, in your 13 weeks during recruit training. You see them at church, but you're not allowed to talk to them. If you do, like I did, you get in a lot of trouble and get smoked on the quarterdeck and get kicked out of church. So that was fun to explain to my senior drill instructor. Other than that, you see them on the range when you go there, basic warrior training and the crucible, if you are on a synchronized cycle with the female recruits. But in 2015, when I went, I was Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, and we did not have a sister company with us, so it was just male recruits at my graduation. After Parris Island, you get 2 weeks of boot leave, which is pretty much so you can decompress from recruit training, and they don't want to send you right back out, because before they did that, there's actually a really high attrition rate and suicide rate from people leaving the recruit training because it was just a lot, and it used to be a lot worse than it is now. I transitioned to the Fleet Marine Force, or the Fleet as Marines call it, to 8th Communications Battalion, also known as 8th Crime Battalion, because everyone was always in trouble. And I served my rest of my contract there and deployed twice. Well, I consider it deployments. One of them a deployment, the other one was an op, but depending on who you ask, like, I never saw combat because of the time I was in. We weren't actively deploying to combat zones for my job, so I didn't have the chance to do that, but I went on a MEU, which I call a deployment. But a Slusser has been in every conflict America has ever been in since the Revolutionary War. So I kind of got to continue that on with technically Operation Enduring Freedom, which is what was kind of going on while I was in the Middle East. It's kind of a gray area with timing, but the Middle East I was a part of.
The reason why I joined is I had, for 1 week of my life, for the first time in my life, when I was 18, I had nothing going on. I had nothing productive. I'm a firm believer in the law of averages. So, I think there's a saying that says you're the sum of the three people you hang out with most. And I definitely was. They had been making, my close buddies had been making some poor decisions out of high school. And I started, shortly after high school, I started kind of making poor decisions with them as well. I quit my job. And it was the summer after senior year. I was working at a restaurant, and like I said, I quit my job, and I hid it from my parents. And they were still supporting me going to community college. And I would get dressed to go to work, and instead of going to work, I would hang out with my buddies. And we didn't do anything crazy. I never got into drugs or anything. But I would just go hang out with them and waste time. Then I'd come home, pretend that I had worked a hard shift, and then sit on the couch and do nothing. And so after a week of that, I'll never forget this moment. I was sitting on my couch, and I said, I have got to do something. I am wasting away here. I'm living a lie. And I had a pretty good upbringing. My parents were great, really good family. And I just said, this is not what right looks like. And no more than 5 minutes later, I get a phone call from this phone number. I have no idea who it is. And it was an Army recruiter who had spoken to me. I know it wasn't senior year, so it must have been a year or two before that. And he said, hey, is this Mesa Martinez? I said, yes, it is. He goes, hey, I'm Sergeant, I think his name was Killman. I'm Sergeant Killman with the U.S. Army Recruiting Office. Just wondering what you're doing with your life. And literally the day I had said I'm doing nothing with my life, this guy called and asked and said, what are you doing with your life? And I said, this has got to be a sign. So he said, the station was in the mall, the recruiting station. And he said, come on down, see what you got. Or, let's see what we got for you. So I said, sure. So I went down there, and they had a big poster of a tank in the window, and I was sold. I grew up watching plenty of war movies. My father is a Navy veteran, but he never pushed military on me. He never even brought it up much. I served during the Vietnam era. And yeah, I saw the big tank in the window, and I grew up playing video games, playing, what little boy didn't play soldier. And I said, let's do it. And that was the beginning of my, I guess, Army career. So 2007, I enlisted into the delayed entry program, and then 52 or 56 days later, I shipped off January 31st, 2008, as a military policeman. I think I came in as like an E2. I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I did my basic training and military police training there. And it's a very important time, because this is where I met my brothers for the rest of my life. I know a lot of people say that, but as I go on, you'll see just how close we stayed physically and emotionally. So I graduated from there. I went to Fort Bliss, Texas, and El Paso. It's funny, because one of the things that I wanted to do was travel in my life. And when I graduated and they said, hey, you're going to Fort Bliss, I lived in California, and the 10 freeway is a very big freeway. It goes from Los Angeles, pretty much my front door, to literally the front door of Fort Bliss, 10.5 hours. I said, oh, well, this isn't much of a travel experience, but what the heck, I'm here. So I go to Fort Bliss, get to a kind of an unconventional unit for a military policeman. I didn't go to a military police unit. I went to it's called 1st Armored Division, strictly combat driven mission, and the combat mission focus. So I didn't do any police work. I did all training and war fighting, I guess you would call it. And here is where I firmly believe you are developed as a person. Just like you can have good parents and bad parents and everything in between, same thing applies to Army leadership. I was very, very fortunate to have absolutely wonderful leadership guiding me through my career. So I had a wonderful group around me. Shortly thereafter, I was in 2008. November 2009, deployed to Iraq for a year. I was in northern Iraq. Very busy deployment, but very uneventful. We brought everyone back, and when I got back, we were there for a year. When I got back, it was November 2010, so 365, and I was again fortunate to get the opportunity to go to canine school. So from Fort Bliss, I had gotten back as an E4, promoted to E5 sergeant, and I went to San Antonio, Texas for a couple months. Went to the canine school, graduated. I went to Germany in 2010, went to my first military police unit, got to play with drug dogs and bomb dogs, and it was a great experience. And 2012, I met my wife in Germany. She's Air Force as well. She's currently still active duty. We had our first son in 2012 as well. The cliche short honeymoon period, short engagement, and then quick marriage, and then a quick child after that. I'm happy to say that 8 years later, we're still happily married and have a family of 5. And in 2014, my son was going to be 2, and I had come up on my re-enlistment window, and we were still in Germany, and I had missed a lot of important events in my son's life due to the Army. Just training and just being away and being gone. I mean, I was across the country when she called me to say she was pregnant, and put a lot of stress on this. But after a lot of thinking and some unfortunate events in 2014, I realized it would be the best for me to leave the Army and be there for my family and be the father that I had when I was growing up, and be there for my son after missing so much. So in 2014, I got out, 2 years inactive, and then fully discharged in 2016.
When I came out, I was still in the same industry, right? I'm a contractor for the federal government. I'm the senior advisor or senior systems engineer, technical advisor for the government right now, one of the agencies. I work with a lot of military folks, mostly Air Force right now, but there are some Marines and Navy and Army people there. I haven't found any Coasties, but they're around, I'm sure. And but yeah, I think it was easier for me coming back.
So I joined March 23rd, 2004, out of Great Lakes. I flew from Philadelphia to Great Lakes, and that's where I conducted my basic training. The hardest part was not getting enough exercise. So I joined when I was 19 years old, and I was in relatively good shape just coming out of high school, playing multiple sports in college. And so not getting enough was the way it was. I mean, you talk to my father, so he was in the military, and so I kind of had that experience of you're going to do what you're told, and that's how it's going to go. So I fell in line with that. 2 grandfathers were in the Navy. One was a gunner's mate on the Wisconsin. One was a UDT, or what they call SEALs now, and then many other, friends, family in the military. My uncle was in the Army. He just got out 2 years ago. So my first assignment, this is, so in the Navy, you go from boot camp to your A school and your C school. So I don't know if that you consider my first assignment, but my first true Navy assignment was the USS Saipan in 2005 after graduating from A school and C school, which is after basic. And the USS Saipan was an amphibious assault ship, not as big as an aircraft carrier, but does a lot more. It's not nuclear powered, so we got to do a lot of things. And when I got there, I was told we were decommissioning, right? The decommissioning of the USS Saipan. It was an old ship, still asbestos on the ship that we had to live with, so that was fun. But we got to do a lot of things.
I made the most of my time. And then my second duty station, they sent me to shore duty. So at the time, my wife had a deep vein thrombosis, or a DVT, and we were supposed to go to Sicily, but that ended up getting canceled because they didn't have the hospitals to take care of that if it had ever occurred again. So I got stuck in Washington, D.C. I got bored on shore duty, so I volunteered to join the Special Operations Command, and so I deployed a couple more times, and then I got out. And after I got out, I went back to Afghanistan. It was kind of one of those things where, I'd been to Iraq, I'd been to Africa, I'd been counter narcotics, Baltic operations, everything, but I hadn't really seen Afghanistan, and it was something I wanted to do. So I deployed to Afghanistan as a contractor and supported DoD operations, and I did homemade explosives over there. Funny story. In ninth grade, Williamsport High School in Pennsylvania, we had to write a letter to ourselves, right? We had to write about what we wanted to do, what we were doing currently, and what we wanted to do when we graduated, career, everything like that. And so as a senior, you get there and you forgot about the letter, first of all, right? So it's funny, one day you walk in and here's a letter, and all of a sudden you remember. And so I opened it up, and it said, how old I was, who I was dating at the time. I can't remember that, honestly. But it had those things, and then it talked about wanting to join the military, right? Both my grandfathers were in the military, my dad was in the military. It just seemed like something I wanted to do, keep active, serve the country. At the time, like I said, I graduated in 2002, 9/11 had just happened. One of my best friends, Ryan Byrne, he actually dropped out of high school when he turned 18 in our senior year, just so he could join the Marine Corps, right? So that was kind of the friends that I hung out with. And so that's why, getting this letter, it said I wanted to be a doctor in the Navy. So I didn't quite get there, but I was a biochemistry major at Bloomsburg for a while. And then about sophomore year, I said, this really isn't for me. So I decided to join the military, and that's kind of where we're at now.
Interesting question I get. So when I was 17, just after my 17th birthday, I get a postcard from Army Reserve recruiter, thinking that, well, hey, I'm not 18, they can't recruit me. And it was for like a free pair of socks or something, or a flashlight, I forget. So I returned the postcard, and a week later, a recruiter's calling me, and I'm like, but I'm 17, I can't, I'm still a junior in high school, I didn't graduate high school. And they're like, well, come in, take the test, we'll see how you do, da-da-da. And I did surprisingly well on my it's called an ASVAB, A-S-V-A-B. It's a aptitude test that tells you basically what jobs you could have in the military. I scored I think it was like an 85 on the pre-test, and I scored an 85 on the, so a week later, well, let's go down, we'll take the actual test, whatever. And they showed me all the jobs that I could get and whatever. And I was like, okay. So I got the test results that day, and again, scored an 85. And they showed me pretty much all the jobs that I could get based on my score within the military. And I kind of figured I wasn't doing anything that summer anyway. And so what the Army offered was a split option training, where my junior, senior summer, I went to basic combat training for 8 weeks. And then after graduating high school, I would go to my advanced individual training. I come from a family of 10. I have 8 sisters and a brother. So I knew that paying for college was going to be extremely difficult. I kind of assumed that I'd be on my own for it. And the Army offered me a way to help pay for college. So I would say the biggest reason why I joined was for the college money, but it was the circumstances behind it that were sort of like, well, I'm not really doing anything this summer. I get paid to go up to the Army, whatever. I was just kind of indifferent about a lot of things at that time in my life. It was just kind of whatever. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a food service sergeant during World War II. What I didn't know when I joined, so when you join the Army, you have to pick your job. And I could have been a lot of different things, but at 17, food service offered $2,000 cash bonus. And at 17, $2,000 is a lot of money. Well, back then, I mean, it still is, but back then it was worth a lot more than it is now. Anyway, so I decided to do food service, and not knowing that my grandfather was a food service sergeant during World War II, which was really awesome. That and his whole story in and of itself is a good story. But anyway, so I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for I went late June, So that was 1994. School ran out till June 30th because of all the snow that we had that year. Got to basic training in, I think it was July 1st. I arrived in Fort Jackson. And for whatever reason, we ended up getting delayed for like 12 days in what's called reception before we actually got to training. By the time we got to training, it was like 12 or 13 days later. So we did 8 weeks of basic combat training. We learned how to shoot rifles and do compass in the woods and all that stuff. And the end of the training didn't end until after school had already started. So I missed like the first 3 days of my senior year, which to me, I didn't really care. But it was funny because I remember coming to school on Monday and my gym teacher, I wasn't dressed for gym. And she's like, well, you have to take a deduction because I sent a note to your homeroom teacher. I'm like, lady, I was actually in the Army. Like, I graduated Friday. I didn't get here till Saturday. And she had a really hard time wrapping her head around the concept that I had gone to basic combat training in the actual Army, like with all of the other real Army people. Like, she just couldn't wrap her head around it. Our platoon, a platoon is made up of about 60 people, we were from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different ages. A true cross-section of society. And you have to take 60 people and turn them into a unit, basically of a seamless working unit. And the sooner that they meld, the sooner the drill sergeants basically stop beating on you. It took us quite a while because they said the summertime folks it takes longer because you get a lot of high school graduates, you get a lot of college graduates. They said that the folks that show up in like November, December time frame are typically your more moldable ones because they're people who have decided this is what they want to do. This isn't just college money for them. So they mentally they break you down to like basically it's a form of brainwashing. I shouldn't say they brainwash you, but it's a form of brainwashing where they empty everything out that you know and make you learn new stuff. And one of the biggest ways that they do that is through drill and ceremony. So like marching. And I remember one Saturday, it was 95 degrees at 10 a.m. in South Carolina in July. And it's supposed to be one of our down days, one of our off days. And they're called grass drills. What they do is they just march you, and then somewhere in between you do some push-ups and stuff like that, just because the drill sergeant just gets tired of like screaming at you. I learned to mentally train myself that I can suck it up, or I can dismiss whatever it is that's going on around me temporarily and lock in on whatever it is that's going on, just to like get through that one particular moment in time.
I gotta be honest with you. I came to this country in the 80s and I actually was running from an abusive husband and I joined the military. I didn't have any of my family here and I was feeling alone and I didn't like shelters and I didn't want to go back home because I already started building a future here for myself. So I joined the Army. I came from Trinidad and Tobago. My training was in South Carolina. It was nice and hot, like I like it, so yeah. I was stationed in Germany. So I ended up going to Germany for 3 years. So I guess people would think because I was already coming from another island and then coming to America, yeah, that was a big change. I did travel a lot before I came here, but I never went to I went to other islands. So coming to America, and everybody want to be in America or see America, that was huge. But then coming to America, joining the Army, and then they say to you, you're going to Germany. Oh, that was crazy. And then being in Germany, I just loved it. I loved everything. I loved traveling, which I did. I met 4 girlfriends, so it was 5 of us, and they were for different states. And we just traveled every chance we get. We never came back. We would call When you're in Germany and you're in the military, the United States, everybody called it the world. So you didn't come back to the world when you had vacation unless it was an emergency or something, you came back. Otherwise, people like us, we ventured. So I went to Amsterdam, Italy, Austria, France. Paris. We every chance we got, we traveled. We went all over Germany. We partied. We were young. So my girlfriends and I, we would rent cars and drive to Stuttgart, party, stay in the hotel overnight, just party, and just leave the next day and come back. We go to places I can't even remember the names of in Germany just to go to a party. One of my girlfriends was a DJ from Texas. She's now a pastor.
Oh,
And she met her husband in the military. He's also a pastor now.
that's so awesome.
And she was our DJ, so we got invited to a whole bunch of parties. Once they found out this military girl from America was actually a female DJ, and then they would invite her to their clubs and hear how she played. And it was a big thing that they had these soldier females. It's also a big thing with black because at the time when I was in Germany in the 80s, in the 90s, they didn't like Germans in the part of the areas, some areas we go to, wasn't used to being around blacks, much less a black soldier, a female black soldier. And I remember one time we were going to the field and we stopped at this stop. Can't remember, I was so young, I was in my 20s. And these people literally was like shocked to see that I was a soldier in uniform, wanted us to take our hats off, would poke at us to see we were like, they were real. And they just was amazed. Didn't bother us, we just had a ball. I was young, 21, you have fun. The way the Army works, so I work admin, I work with the company, with the captain. So it'd be like, say, there's an emergency wherever this soldier's at and he have to go home for an emergency and stuff. Since I live in the barracks, I would be the one, and I work in that office, I'd be the one that would wake up to get stuff rolling for the soldier, to get it to the battalion so the bigger guys can make a decision, so getting tickets and all this stuff so the soldier can fly. But in saying that, it doesn't keep you from being part of the PT in the morning, eating breakfast with everybody in the morning. Just because you work in this office doesn't stop you from doing other things. So, like when we go into the field, nobody drives your truck for you because you work in the office. No, then it would be my sergeant and I, he would be driving, I'd be the shotgun, or he'd be the shotgun, I'd be the driver. We all drive out, work to where we need to go in the field. So, and then when you get in the field, yeah, you setting up to do admin work, same work that you would do like if you was back. But if somebody say you still have to build your tent, you still have to put up your tent, you still have to participate. Just because you do admin work doesn't mean you don't have to be ready for war. You have to be ready for war no matter what your skills are. So on post where I lived, on the one floor, it was mixed. Like they would have guys in rooms and girls in rooms. We'd be on the same floor. It didn't matter. But it was 23 females at one time that lived on that post, on that floor. And they had 2 bathrooms. So when I say 2 bathrooms, like two different bathrooms you can go into with like 3 shower heads in this one and 3 shower heads and 2 toilet stalls, and all 23 of us. And it's not like here where some people work at 8:30 and some people work at 9:30. No, we're all up at 4 for PT, so we're all getting in and getting out of this. So it's crazy that life you live and you get so numb to it. And then like you will come to America and go to the gym and you come out the shower and all these ladies in the shower is like, and even long years after, I'm just like still not impressed. Like, when you live with females like that, man, and you coming from an island where I come from, where we celebrate Carnival, where it's being really half naked in the streets for about a week and 2 days straight. I mean, it's like, lady, please. I didn't even notice you were standing over there. Honestly, I'm so tired from whatever I was doing in the gym, you know. But you see a lot of things that is like really normal and not a big deal to you. It's to a lot of people. The life I lived in the military and what I got from the military, I will never trade it. Even if I die and come back, I wouldn't trade that. And I would want that discipline in my life. I was always a good girl, but if you take that part of the military with you, it makes you a better person and strong and resilient.
So it originally was to pay for college. And so I was ROTC, Army ROTC. And let's just say I enjoyed college too much, but it wasn't the college aspects, it was the social aspects of college that I enjoyed too much. And my partying led to me failing out in 3 short semesters. But I had made a commitment to the Army through ROTC, and they had spent money on me. And so the rules were you either have to pay back the money or you go in. And I think they're still the same today. And basically, I had to go in. So I went, my intent was to be an officer. That didn't work out. So I had to go active, and I had a very short window of time to report to duty. And once I reported to duty, I mean, basically I limited the number of jobs I could have. My testing scores were such that I could have any job I wanted to if I had the time, but I didn't have the time. So it was like either, I don't remember what all my choices were, but truck driver was the most attractive. So I did my basic training at Fort Dix, and that was 3 months. And then my AITs, my truck training was 3 months, also at Fort Dix. And then after I left Dix and got to my permanent duty station at Fort Bragg, even though I had already had all the training on how to drive the vehicles in Dix, when I arrived at my company, because it was a transportation company, that's all they did is, move things. And I drove basically a big green Freightliner. We had to requalify when we got there. So I had like another 3 weeks of training when I arrived. See, I was in during the C ration phase, and they were just transitioning to MREs. Matter of fact, Fort Bragg was the first one to get the MREs. And I literally, I don't know, if I get into the Guinness Book of World Records, but I literally hauled the first truckload of MREs off the plane.
My draft number was 3. And at that time, it's the first time I was ever in the top 10 for anything in my life. So, I did my enlisted time. I earned an appointment to West Point from the Army. Left West Point after 1 year. And my time as an enlisted person was up. So I ended up going to the University of South Carolina and got my degree and graduated in 1974, worked for the state of South Carolina for a while and as a social worker. And then they had a federal grant cut, so they had to trim some jobs. I was one of them. And went on to the roles of the unemployed and got turned down for a job as a combination short order cook and dishwasher at a 24-hour Greasy Spoon in Columbia, South Carolina that we used to go to at 3 and 4 in the morning after a night of heavy partying. And I said, that's as low as I'm going. Walked out the door, turned right, walked to the Army recruiter and re-enlisted. And went to Officer Candidate School in January of 1976. And got commissioned in April of 76 as an infantry officer. And over the course of my career, I spent time as a platoon leader, company commander, at various command jobs, staff jobs, NATO general staff in Germany. Taught ROTC at Florida State and University of Puerto Rico. And then retired, as I said, in 1996 as a lieutenant colonel from St. Louis, Missouri, from the Army Reserve Personnel Center. where I had responsibility for the career management and professional development of about 10,000 infantry, special forces, and civil affairs officers. And here we are. Well, my basic training took place at Fort Dix, New Jersey, which is not that far from here. And then the Vietnam orientation training and infantry AIT, which is advanced infantry training, took place at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I had orders to go to Vietnam, 1st at 2nd Infantry of 1st Infantry Division. And as we were, excuse me, as we were at Travis Air Force Base loading the airplane to go to Vietnam, a Jeep pulled up and said, PFC Heath. I said, yeah, right here. They said, your orders have been changed. Throw your duffel bag in the back of the Jeep and come with me. That was that. I was sent to West Point Prep School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And that basically is where my Army career sort of started. Basic training, and then AIT, and then a change in fortunes, if you will, and went to West Point Prep, and then West Point, and then South Carolina, and then re-enlisting in 1975, 76. I had a great time. 22 some odd years of active duty that I served. Total of 27 years when you figure in the reserve time and active reserve time and inactive reserve time. Yeah, I think it did several things for me. I was single the whole time that I was in the service, so every 3 years I knew I was moving somewhere else. But when I was in Germany, I had an opportunity to audition for a play. And I just kind of fell in love with theater and acting, and I started taking assignments that were more personally enhancing than career enhancing. So yeah, I look at it as some of the best times of my life.
How you doing, Dad? All right?
I'm doing all
You feel good?
right. Yeah.
For 101?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
March 41.
Dad, do you want to tell Courtney why you joined the Army before you were enlisted?
Very simple. I wanted to fight Hitler. All the years I joined.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
Yes.
You found what he did was appalling.
Yes.
A lot of people did because of you and your service and many others like you.
Yeah.
He was defeated.
Yes. I served quite a few places.
Did you serve in India?
Yes. I served in India. Well, it was okay. I had to be home. That's all I trained. I can't remember where.
Well, you trained in Pennsylvania at Fort Reynolds. Camp
Really?
Reynolds. You remember you were at Camp Reynolds north of Pittsburgh?
Oh, I did, but if you had to remind it to me, I would have known.
Do you remember you were at Camp Seibert in Alabama?
Yes.
Do you remember you were in Georgia, Toccoa?
Oh, Toccoa, Georgia.
Toccoa, Tallulah Falls and Toccoa.
Tallulah, yeah.
Do you remember you were stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I hardly can remember that.
Do you remember you trained at Fort Dix, New Jersey?
No.
No?
No, I can't remember that.
Do you remember going to Virginia Polytechnic Institute while you were in the Army?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you reminded me.
And you were trained for chemical engineering?
Yes.
And you were being trained for chemical warfare,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the Army was doing a top secret program, and they were going to send you further to a chemical school. Remember?
I don't remember.
And then they stopped it, and that's when they had the Manhattan Project. So they didn't need you
Yeah.
in chemical warfare,
Right.
and they sent you off to fight in India.
Yeah. What a difference. God bless America.
Say it like you mean it.
God bless America.
And do you love this country?
I sure do.
Say it.
I love America. There's no place like it.